Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Frame by Frame podcast. For those of you who have only just started tuning in, I'm Cross Preston along with Zach Oleski and William Carson. And the three of us are UX designers, and we are also bootcamp graduates from the Bootcamp Career Foundry. If you want to know any more about us, please check us out on LinkedIn. You'll be able to see everything, all of our backgrounds, and hey, please get in touch with any of us if you're working on a project, if you need any guidance, maybe you're thinking of entering a bootcamp yourself. We've talked about this in a previous episode, so please do check out our previous episodes. So the main topic we will be talking about is something that, well, nobody can escape. We all know it in some form or another. We all use its technology in some form or another, and that is AI, artificial intelligence. Therefore, we feel that it's definitely a hot topic. I'm sure some of us get bored of hearing it, but it is here to stay, and there are so many developments. AI is everywhere, from when you message people online, especially customer services. Even technically, AI has been around for generations. One could argue that the washing machine that replaced the mangle is technically an AI because you don't have to manually wash it. You just pop in your washing, press a few buttons, and it washes it for you. So I think what we'll do is we'll start off with the question: Is AI only a modern thing that's only been vaguely where everyone's only been vaguely aware of over the last 30 years, and everyone now knows what it is? Or could we say that the principle of AI has been around forever whenever there's a technological update? How would you guys say or describe the effectiveness of, well, let's start off with updating everything, because AI is essentially updated technology. Would you say that AI was something that we could say existed long before the advent of computers? What do you guys think about that?
I'll give my shot first. Um, this one's rough because sometimes I think like, oh, let me just ask Siri a question on my phone, and then I'll just be confused real quick. Like, wait a sec, is this AI? Is this not AI? And then I'm not really sure. Upon a quick Google search, um, the answer I find is more like, oh, artificial intelligence is just a problem-solving method that aims to replicate the human's ability to solve problems, um, which is interesting. We have some products like that. I can't name any. I mean, other than ChatGPT and the more modern tools that we've discovered just these last couple of years. Um, I think I need a little bit deeper of a Google search to go find some of those things. So,
I would say a
Zach, how about you?
calculator. It's a calculator. They changed how math was done when the calculator came out, and now they're telling kids they can't use ChatGPT to write a paper, even though I think you just have to get a little more creative with how you're asking these kids to present something. Like, okay, if you're going to use ChatGPT to write your paper, then the requirement is you have to then rewrite what it spit out. Like, submit the typed version, but I want your take on it. Like, edit what it gave you, because I mean, if anybody's used ChatGPT, they know the robotic response you get. I mean, it's slightly getting better, but even then, it's like if you ask it the same question multiple times, you'll get the same response, and it's always worded. Even if you ask it to reword it, it's always kind of the same. Like, there's no human flow to it, if that makes sense.
So can we say then that, especially with ChatGPT, that for the era we're in now, obviously it's something that could be changed in the future and probably will. Could we say that this is a big flaw with ChatGPT, that really it doesn't? The thing is, an AI system doesn't actually understand language the same way we do. We learn a language, we grow up with it. Even even before we're even 1 year old. I even read some studies where actually, even when you're, in the womb, you actually are exposed to sounds and auditory things. So could we not say then that right now, something like ChatGPT just can't read text like a human can? So if you send me a message, of course I can read all of it. I'm not looking for specific keywords upon which I can answer you by. Can we say that? Or do we think that actually ChatGPT can, either now or in the future, understand text just like a
No,
human can?
I would point out humor or comedy as a example. If you tell ChatGPT, hey, write me some jokes, it's gonna give you whatever it's been fed, and there's no real humor behind it. Like, it doesn't understand the humor. Like, I noticed that I've tried using it for translations. It's great at translations if you want textbook translation, but if you want to put a turn of phrase in there that the computer just doesn't understand, it doesn't have that human connection that makes that bit of language funny or not funny, or maybe it has a double meaning. And I think you can try to train that, but it will never really understand it. Like, it lacks that feeling to it.
I agree with that. I mean, sometimes when if I'm looking for a quick translation between English and German, sometimes I will use, just for something really quick, I will just use DeepL, and then obviously I give it a quick once over. But this is the other thing as well. A lot of things in German is you actually use the English word. So, for example, it's perfectly okay to say manager or like training coordinator, rather than Koordination Leiter or something like that, just as an example. So, yeah, ChatGPT, maybe there will be one called ChatGPT, but ChatGPT does obviously have its limitations. Mind you, there was one thing actually. Do you remember years ago when YouTube was doing these auto captions for videos, where you could just turn it on, and a lot of the time it was very humorous because the words were actually not what was being said, but what the programming thought was being said. And there were some videos actually where people thought it was a conspiracy theory. So if someone was talking something about politics, and you got these really funny subtitles, one of those sort of hidden meaning things. But I agree. I think that it's obviously far from perfect. I mean, DeepL is currently the best one right now. I mean, it far outclasses Google Translate. I wouldn't use Google Translate for even more than a basic phrase that is so well known. So yeah, I think that there are limitations. But do you suppose that, well, because AI and ChatGPT is always being programmed by humans, based on humans' behavior, attitudes, awareness, culture, etc., do we think that at any point in the future that we would get to a point where we could be talking to someone, and it would be indistinguishable as to whether we're talking to an AI or an actual human? How would you guys surmise that, or at least what opinions do you have on what could be in the future regarding the likes of ChatGPT or
Like
anything
anything
else?
else that's going to improve, it's always going to get better. But there's, again, that it's a computer. Like, there's a point where I feel like it's part of human nature that you will recognize, even if it takes you a minute. There's always going to be something that sticks out, no matter what it is. You can try to perfect how something types to you, or if it's artificial speech, how it talks to you. There's still, like, those catches that are always going to be there, because you can't teach feeling to a computer. I don't believe you can. I believe it can understand, and it can respond according to a million situations it's been programmed to recognize. But there's that, I don't know if at that point, you're talking sentient computer life instead of artificial intelligence.
I think maybe a better question here is, will it feel, instead of like will it feel human is will it feel natural, because we've all had conversations through like a random person messaging us on Facebook or through text, and we can tell it's a scammer immediately. But like, yeah, it's a person on the other side. They're just trying to scam us, so they're using unnatural or language that feels weird. Sure, there might be a human on the other end, but it's certainly not natural. Similar to how when you're speaking with someone who primarily speaks a different language. Like, I currently work part-time in a restaurant, and most of the people in the kitchen are Hispanic, and so they primarily speak Spanish. I'm sure whenever I try to ask them for anything, it doesn't feel natural. I'm sure it could feel the same way as if a robot's trying to talk to them. I'm still a human, but the way I talk might be totally unnatural, which I think is probably the spot that AI feels like even now and will probably feel like for a while.
Yeah, I think you've got a really valid point there. I mean, actually, funnily enough, only recently on LinkedIn, I made a comment on a post where someone had posted that they got a message on LinkedIn asking, these really sort of creepy messages. How, like you said, there's a human at the end of it, but let's just say this message, or indeed a lot of these scam messages, the name doesn't exactly match the the text. So, for example, the person at the end had a completely English name, American name, but for example, no native speaker of English, for example, would spell waste um, as in like rubbish. The same way that we would spell waste as in part of the anatomy. It's these kinds of things where you can really see that someone's not got that awareness of the nuance of a language, like you said. I mean, even now, in German, people say Germans very often pluralize words that we don't, that are pluralized in German. So information in German, Information, plural Informationen. So do we? So I guess that DeepL, the likes of DeepL or any Chat GPT, won't ever fully be able to imitate, and even if it can, it's not adaptable. So if I program an AI, a chat GPT system, to reply specifically to a certain sentence in the way that I would typically reply, yeah, but of course the limitation there is it's only for that specific reply. I would have to keep adding giving it examples and then choosing the appropriate reply. So even if, and I agree with you guys, I think even if AI can emulate, it's not going to be adaptable. I mean, people can go from being happy and to sad within a second, depending on what. Whereas an AI, you can train or program an AI to imitate, but then you have to actually program it again, and then it's not natural. So yeah, I think that's also possibly a better question. Will, is it's not a case of can ChatGPT seem human? Can it seem natural?
Well, you brought up a good point with the waste. So there is context and situational stuff that comes up where you can use wordplay to make something funny, or if it's like last week with the rabbit and the hop at the end because of the mascot. There's things I think AI won't catch like a human will, especially if it's something that can turn the conversation to get a chuckle or turn the conversation to be a little bit snide or backhanded. It's a language thing. So, yeah. I mean, and you have wordplay on that. I mean, look at rap. You're using a different word, spelt the same, sounds the same, to change the meaning of your sentence. I think that's something that's not easily trained. I don't know if they can't try to emulate it, but again, it's sometimes, especially if we're talking AI being unrecognizable, I think in certain contexts it'll automatically tell on itself.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the thing is, you mentioned, you brought up a really good example, Zach. Is the thing is with wordplay, a lot of the time, I mean, the way I learned when it came to writing about wordplay, so obviously, have a homophone, is if it's to make it even more obvious. So, for example, if I were to make a joke or I say something about waste and waste, I would put something in quotation marks so people would know that if they're reading it as if they were speaking it, they know that it's intended. Whereas if you don't, this is sort of a rule where if you put something in quotation marks, someone could look at it and think, "Oh, that's not very grammatical. Oh, that's not very," but actually they think, "Oh, the person who's done this is obviously intending that." I mean, rules are there. There's always an exception to the rule. But I think wordplay as well is, in fact, this flows into the next sort of thing I wanted to bring up actually, because we're talking about chat and everything. But for example, wordplay does generally work better. So, for example, if I was telling I thought up of a new joke actually yesterday, and I told my mum and I said, "Hey, mum, someone stole someone stole my apple pie." And I went to tell the policeman, and he said, "Well, what do you want me to do about it? Someone stole your apple pie." I said, "Well, can you not do what he did to my apple pie? Is put him in custody." You know,
Nice.
custody. Obviously, written differently, but depending on how you say it, it's the same. So obviously, what I would do if I was writing that, I would spell custody, the legal word, as like the same as custard with Y, but I'd put it in quotations so people would know that it's intended to be the wrong word, even though it's a homophone. But this is what I wanted to get onto actually, and I've got a really good example for all of you listening out there, even you two, Zach and Will. I've got a really good recommendation in terms of the topic I want to bring up relating to what we were just talking about is how far can AI go in terms of going from Chat GPT to say Speak GPT or any equivalent, that we could actually we have obviously things like Microsoft Sam, we do have Auto, but I mean actually an AI where again it is indistinguishable from an actual
Well,
person. So
what was
nuances,
the
tone.
song that recently popped up? I don't know if it was on I can't remember if it was on Instagram or maybe it popped up on TikTok. It was
I have none of those, so
no,
I have no
it
idea.
made the
I'm not in the
news
loop
because
with
it was a big deal. It was two rappers, maybe.
I want to say it was either Drake or Jay-Z.
It was
where
Drake.
Someone replicated a song or created a song with one of
They
their
created
voices.
they created a
and
song with their
The
voice.
artist
Yeah,
was not happy.
yeah. They had like a new release and nobody knew, and it like had a huge amount of plays, and those guys were like, "We had nothing to do with that."
This seems like an upgrade on auto-tune because obviously auto-tune is something where it can make anyone sound good as a singer, but it seems like it's gone beyond that now. It's not just a case of sounding good as a singer, but sounding as good as another singer, pitch
Yeah, but
perfect. So is that what it's about then? That some AI actually replicated the voice of one of these
it
rappers,
was his
and
voice
people
with
couldn't tell.
I can't remember who. Maybe it was the DJ or it was a thing with two famous people, and they like were doing a collab single or something, and yeah, it sounded exactly like the person, and maybe it was whoever the DJ was, but it sounded exactly like their work and their voice and everything, and the people who were involved, I think it was Drake, it was one of them, was like, that's not me. Like, I did not do that.
It's scary. I'm hearing this and I'm thinking, wow, because I've not heard this story, but there was something similar, not quite with oral, but with visual, where there was a story actually where I think you might have heard of this one. It was probably a couple of days ago, where this young woman posted a photo of herself on Instagram, completely innocent, ordinary clothing, nothing nude or anything like that. And someone that knew her from a couple of years ago actually used AI to generate a nude photo of her. And we're not just talking about what creeps used to do, where they'd cut out faces and stick them on. No, this was actually where it could. You'd be forgiven for thinking that was actually her, posting a nude photo of herself rather than someone using AI to do it. I mean, but we've also seen AI. I think there was some years ago after Michael Jackson passed away. I think people used AI to actually reconstruct a dance sequence he did on stage. But it's scary how much more creativity and freedom people can have with AI. It's not just a case of now replicating what someone's done, but actually getting that person, their image, voice, likeness, and doing something original with it. It is scary stuff.
Yeah, and that's where there has to be some kind of, I don't know how that's the problem, is you can't just draw a flat line and be like, you can't use that other person's voice. Like, it's...
Well, no. A voice I don't think is actually copyright. I mean, singing is obviously different, but then it's not the voice that's the copyright. It's the composition. It's the music.
But
it's not the actual voice.
That person's voice. Like, how would you feel if somebody did that or something using your voice and you were like, that is not me. I'm denying it wholeheartedly, and they... Yeah, like that's the future we have. You got to be careful. And
well, definitely, but like you said, how do we draw the line with that? How would that, if a government wanted to bring in a law and say, oh, you are not allowed? I mean, we have it with image, right? If someone takes a photo of me, they technically own the copyright, but they are not, especially when I've not consented, they are not allowed to publish that image, especially not for commercial purposes. So could we extend that to a person's voice?
In the world of street photography, it's just known that you're taking a photo, and it's good practice to maybe get somebody to sign a paper that gives you permission. But if you do take somebody's photo, they're unaware, and you do post it, they have every right to tell you to take it down. And it's when you don't take it down, they can come at you. And so I guess it's the same with voice. Like, if it's proven it's not your voice and it was being used, you can go and request that it's removed, and some, if need be, some reparations or some kind of rescue to your image at that point. Like with the case of the girl who had the naked photo, then there can be something in the post process of it, but then you're also like getting into the realm of with art. You have a lot of artists trying to sue like Midjourney because they are like, they're ripping off my style. And it's like, well, okay, here's the thing. If they took your painting, you can't say style, because then look at metal. You have a bunch of metal bands, and guess what? It's metal. So yeah, if you don't know anything about metal, it might sound the same, and that's a style. But you can't get somebody in trouble for taking their style. But
well, yeah, but I mean, but it's like in music. I mean, for example, let's say the common pop song uses a chord progression of 1 1 4 5 4, for example, or 1 5 4 5. Now, obviously, I can't just take a song that I hear, it happens to have the chord progression, and I can replicate it, but the actual chord progression is not copyright. It can't be. So how far, or how deep would we have to investigate to be able to determine when something falls within the realms of a person's likeness, be it audio, be it vocal or visual, but at the same time, something where it's not unique. Like for example, it always amuses me when someone says, "Oh, you stole my idea." Well, technically no, because an idea is not tangible property. You can't steal an idea, but
you can steal a patent,
because an idea is not. You can steal a patent, and I wouldn't recommend it. But an idea itself, and the thing is, you get 10 people who have an idea, or you get one person who has an idea. Someone patents that idea, regardless of whether it's moral, because we're not talking about that. We're just talking solely about the line here. If whoever registers a patent, for example, is the owner, whether they came up with the idea or not, they are the owner. So, another thing I wanted to mention is I've heard more people where I think they sound the same than I have seen people who look exactly the same. I'm not talking about twins or anything, but it's like, for example, I can think, oh, so and so reminds me of that person, but then when I've heard the odd person in the past, I think, wow, they sound exactly like so and so. So how would we how would it be distinguished between a person's unique voice, if they have one, and someone else who sounds the same? How would we distinguish
I think
that if it came to
I think there's
using
still going to
AI?
be differences in even two people that sound really close. There's still those telling differences. It's like handwriting. I mean, everybody has a different handwriting. Everybody's got a different fingerprint. If I happen to sound like my father, we still have vocal differences in pitch or tone, or it doesn't matter. There's still something. And so if you're using AI, I think there's a better chance it's going to match or, again, sound really close. But that's where it gets in the realm of Ed Sheeran going to court about plagiarism for songwriting. Like, it's going to come down to, well, is it really stealing then?
Yeah, well, voices. I mean, even before AI came, you had people where they could record someone's voice, and through some, you have to be a decent editor to make it seem convincing, to make it professional. But there were times in the past when people recorded voices, like, for example, I'm sure you're both familiar with the Arnold Schwarzenegger prank calls, right? The soundboards. I'm sure you're both familiar with them, right?
Does not
Yeah.
ring a bell for me.
Oh, I forgot. You're a young pup. You missed out on the 2000s.
I mean, and then
yeah.
there's
well, Zach and I will educate you later, Will. After this episode, we'll teach you all about the 2000s internet, and then you will have everything you need to know to survive in this era.
Well, and then there's Austrian Death Machine. So if you guys don't know what that is, it's I can't remember the singer's name. Yeah, I can't remember his name, but he has an actual band, but they made another band called the Austrian Death Machine, and it's Arnold Schwarzenegger metal. And I think one of their songs is actually called "Get to the Chopper," and that's like the whole song, but they're using Arnold Schwarzenegger's voice in a metal song.
Is it Tim Lambesis?
Oh man, I gotta Google that. Hold on.
I was 20 seconds early.
Oh yeah, I think it's one of the most. It's one of the most iconic voices ever. I mean, I remember years ago, the first prank call I heard with the Arnold Schwarzenegger one. It all generally starts off with, "Good morning, how are you?" But the thing is, though, with that soundboard, it was quite obvious, because certain things, like one of the laughs, you can actually hear the music from the scene in the movie in the background. So it's obviously adopted recording, but the principle is still the same. You're still using someone's exact voice likeness to do other things that they are obviously not aware of.
And I think that's where, at that point, it will come down to like more civil cases where it's like, okay, you're using a likeness to my voice, and I'm asking you to shut it down before people can sue people out of doing whatever. At some point, there's a point where people.
Well, technically, you can sue anyone for anything. It doesn't mean that it's going to be successful. That's why when people say, "Oh, I'm going to sue you,"
I think it's more a threat
actually,
of the litigation fees.
Yeah, it's more
like,
threat.
Hey, you're just some dude in his basement. Like Drake could have easily turned around and been like, "You're some dude in his basement who used AI to use my voice, and you take it down, or I'm going to sue you." Well, I didn't technically use your voice. Yeah, but you take it down, or I'm going to sue you. And it's like, I don't care if I lose. I'm going to make you go to court and spend the money.
Yeah, but the thing is, though, when people say, "Oh, I'm going to sue you," you have to send a cease and desist. So if someone took a photo of me and I found it on their website, and I would tell them, I'd say, "Hey, you have to take this down, otherwise further action will be taken." It's not just
no, exactly, yeah.
because courts. Because the thing is, with going to court, courts prefer people to go through mediation first. So they say, okay, I'm sorry, I used the likeness of your voice, although technically it wasn't your voice. I will take it down, and that would be the end of
I
it.
think it's simply the idea of legal repercussions at some point, and obviously some people won't really care. Like, it doesn't matter, but there's still, that's where you'll hear about it then. Like, that's where it'll become something where, oh, it's another case of somebody used Mick Jagger's voice with I have no idea, Dead Mouse or something, and they don't approve, and now we get to see a little court case over it. And I mean, if a record company does that, then
Well, I think
good luck. Remember Milli Vanilli? Like, it's not going to last long.
Well, I think if, like with anything, there's always a landmark case. Like I remember a couple of years ago, the landmark case was to do with transgenderism, where actually someone sued their company successfully, and this was before the laws came in about where transgender, non-binary, etc., actually came in, where you're not allowed to discriminate by law. But this was actually before it, and it was a landmark case, and it actually was instrumental in bringing this new law where you cannot discriminate on someone because they don't identify as the sex gender that they were assigned at birth, or they identify as something else, like third gender, non-binary, etc. So it could be that AI, I can't recall. I don't know of any. Well, when I say I don't know of any cases where AI has been the topic of a court case, although I'm sure it has somewhere. I think actually in the future we will see more and more cases revolving around AI, or at least automatic using of people's voices and likenesses. But then, having said that, more and more crimes are all technology related anyway. You don't. People now, more people steal for bank cards and information rather than breaking into your house to steal a kettle. So, do we think then that AI is actually going to change laws? I mean, it's changing the way we live, but do we think it's actually going to go to the point where it changes laws? That laws will have to be reappealed, new laws will have to come in, old laws will have to go out? What do we think?
I mean, obviously it's going to happen, because anytime there's technological advances, there's always protections to try to combat anything that can come of that technology being misused. I mean, we both live in the EU,
Yeah.
so look at their Datenschutz here in Germany. Like, it's crazy. But I'm more unafraid to do things in general using online, even payments or anything like that, because they're pretty hardcore about it here, I think.
Oh, yeah, definitely. In fact, they've only just recently, well, I don't know if it's actually the Google cars or the vans that, the old Street View. Well, for 10 years, Germany actually stopped Google from doing the Street View, because I was looking it up only before, probably up until maybe 2 or 3 months ago, where it's been updated. I was looking at my street here in Dortmund, and I saw what it was like 10 years ago. So we're talking, well, actually longer, I think. And it was a bit different. Obviously, the building was the same, but I looked it up fairly recently, and I thought, wow, they've actually updated the Street View. So I guess they've allowed Google back in. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, and maybe it's for other countries, but when you have a website that's commercial, you have to put an impressum on there. You have to put your correspondence, if it's a commercial website. In the UK, you don't have
You
to
got to
do
be,
that. I think
yeah,
for businesses, you do. If you're a private person and it's commercial, you don't have to. But here in Germany, any commercial website, be it a business or private individual, you have to put on your impressum, which leads to other questions. Why should I have my address in the public domain?
Well, if you're soliciting in any way, so like even your portfolio, that's where you really got to watch out here, because your portfolio is you soliciting for work. So even if it's not for freelance, you're applying for jobs, you're still soliciting yourself. So you have to have that on there. And I think it has to do with people scamming people, obviously, and yeah, it's just basic protection. But I mean, I don't want to have an impressium, but I have to if I'm using my portfolio to acquire work. So
You see, I won't put one on mine because technically I'm not advertising for. The thing is, on my portfolio, on my website, I've not actually got anything that says I'm looking for work or I'm offering my services. It's so technically there'd be no way for that to stand. I mean, certainly no one's got in touch with me about having an impressum, and unless I commercialize my website in any way, I'm not going to put an impressum on there. But the point of it is, even if it's to prevent scams, instead of having your own personal address on there, your name, your actual address, if I think there could be some reform with it, because it'd be like, well, why not have a central office where people register themselves? I don't mean with when you move to the country, I mean actually where there's a correspondence. But from what I was reading, it's only if it's commercial. If it's not commercial, even if you think that a portfolio could entice someone to offer someone paid work, if it's not specifically listed, the impressum isn't needed. Now, any German will probably tell you it is, because it's a rule, it's a law. As we know, anything that's a rule or a law here, regardless of whether there are exceptions, is always followed
you don't
to
work
the
on
hill.
Sunday, you don't mow your lawn,
So,
you don't use power tools, you keep music under X amount of decibels, and if you're in the garden, you better be
yeah,
sunbathing.
yeah, all this kind of stuff. I mean, it's I don't know, all the countries I visited. I've never known any country to be like that. But even here in Germany, public toilets, you have to pay for them. You go to a station, you have to pay for them. I think, what if I've got no change and I need to go?
I
It's
hope you have extra
ridiculous.
pants.
Um,
But I actually
yeah,
don't mind. It is an inconvenience sometimes, but somebody does have to take care of those bathrooms, and because they are collecting money, I find that it's not as rancid as some of the bathrooms you run into in the States.
well, yeah, but that's the States. I mean, in the States, you get 2011 7-Elevens where you get cockroaches. I saw it once. I saw that once when I was staying in Queens. I was at this Pan Europa hotel, and there was a kiosk just down the road, and I saw a couple of cockroaches, and I thought, I'm glad all the food here is artificial, because I'd be very concerned health and
Yeah, I
safety
understand that.
wise.
Seeing that in Queens, so close to Manhattan, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But to get back to AI though, again, how far do we think that it can go, whether it infringes upon a person's image, or a person's work, or anything else? How far do we think it can go? I mean, we've talked about Chat GPT. How long is it before it goes away from chat and actual speaking? Again, I don't mean like the old Microsoft
I
Sam,
mean, it's out there.
but
They
actual
already have it. It
human voice.
exists. So it's not how long. It's how long till it only gets better and better and better until you can't distinguish. I have no idea, but I think it's going to be relatively fast because it's audio. And yeah, the AI is pretty terrible. Again, it can't convey emotion, but it's not impossible to program that stuff in. I think a little bit easier than language, as far as communication. Um, so yeah, I don't. The thing I'm mostly worried about, I shouldn't even say I'm worried. It's the creative aspect. Like, what is it going to do to our field? So currently we have UX writers. Well, I could put a UX writer out of work by using ChatGPT, but at the same time, there's that issue of context and issue of like, okay, if you're running testing or testing out a language model to use for your users to read, because that's in your company's speech, like that's how they're addressing the clients. I think that is a little bit harder to achieve. So even then, like, I don't have the time to sit there and GPT something, proofread it, change it, throw it in my design. It's like, no, what I need ChatGPT for is because I don't want to put lorem ipsum. So I pick something that's relatively close to what I'm working on. I throw it in there, and when it needs to change, I can take the time later to change it. But initially, I just use it to get in there. So I don't think it'll necessarily replace UX writers. I think their job will change, and I think they'll be more of a editor proofreader, or they'll be the one responsible for prompting the content. Just like I don't think Midjourney or DALL-E or anything is going to take a UX or UI designer's job, because there's still functionality issues inside the designs that this thing spits out at you. Like I've prompted a few and looked at them, and I'm like, I mean, that's great for inspiration, but I can't just pull that and use it, because it doesn't make sense where some of these buttons or actions would be located. The logic is kind of flawed in how it's put together. You can't really, you can't fully trust it. Will it get to that point? It could. You could program it heuristics. You could program anything with AI. Will it happen tomorrow? No. Should UX designers be worried? No, because you don't even know what the users really want. You could interview 100 people, you put the product out there, and you interview another 100 people, and they use your product totally different than the first 100 people. It just depends. And so
Well, yeah. Sometimes some of those other 100 people won't even use the product. I mean, look, take Apple. I've never ever used an Apple iPhone in my life, and to be honest, I'm not really a fan of the price range of them. But I know obviously they are. I think they're more popular than Android. I believe. I could be wrong on that. Mind you, I stick with Android as well for some technical reasons, because I often use the developer tools. I go beyond what most people would want to use a smartphone for. But actually, I just wanted to mention something that, and actually I've referenced this before when I've been talking about AI in the past with people, not specifically for design, but just AI in general. And I don't know about you, Will. You might have been you might have only been still in nappies, or as you guys say, diapers, when this game was released. But you might remember it, Zach. Is Metal Gear Solid 2. And the first time anyone plays it, you do not realize until the very end that
I actually thought you were going to say Metal Storm, which is even older. So yeah.
I know both. Yeah.
I know Metal Storm, but
Mega Man. Come on, Mega Man, really? That's AI. That was AI. That was their plan all along. We're gonna have Mega Man soon. It'll sound like your mom, and it can shoot super accurate.
Well, Metal Gear Solid 2 is the one I'm referring to. So the first time you play the game, I remember the first time I played it, and I got to the end, and it turns out that your commanding officer, Colonel Campbell, the same one from Metal Gear and then Metal Gear Solid, all along was not the real Colonel, but an AI construct based on the protagonist, so Raiden's in this case, based on his experience and expectations, and it was completely indistinguishable. The only way, the first hint that it was an AI is when there's a virus that gets uploaded to the system, and the AI starts going haywire and it says random things. So for those of you out there who've never played Metal Gear Solid 2, I really do recommend that you go on YouTube and you look up Metal Gear Solid 2 AI, and it will be under the video title will be Conversation or Codec Conversation with JD. And it's actually very, very interesting. It's sort of, I'm not going to sound like one of these conspiracy theories, like when people say The Simpsons predicted Trump being president. I think, well, no, it was just a coincidence. But actually, it's not really anything mystical or magical. There's always a chance that someone can be. It's with it. As long as someone exists, there's always a chance they can be anything they want. But I really recommend, of those of you who are gamers, play Metal Gear Solid 2. I know I've probably spoiled it for you a little bit, but it's still a worthwhile game to get into, and it really talks about AI. In fact, it goes on about the things that we are starting to see now. So it's aged very, very well. In fact, it was ahead of its time. So, of course, AI is here to stay. Once it came, it was always here. But the thing is, my personal take, before we wrap this up, my personal take on AI is it should be used alongside a person rather than instead of. That AI can do the mundane tasks that are really repetitive, but I think it's really important to remember that people are the creative ones, and AI can only do what someone programs it to do, and AI does not come up with original ideas. I think AI can be a good thing. I'm not completely opposed to it, but it's not actually even AI that scares me. Like you mentioned earlier, Zach, that uh, one of these rappers' voices was perfectly replicated. This girl who someone used AI technology to realistically and accurately um, show her in the nude. It's scary stuff. So for me, I'm not scared of AI personally. I'm just a little bit scared or wary of people's intentions with the technology itself. I think if people use it in an ethical way, it can be a good thing. But obviously, there'll always be that pocket of or group of people who will use it for nefarious
Do you
means.
do you think
I
this is
think
something we should
that's just
leave
my take on it.
up to then the companies offering the AI solutions? Like, should there be a little bit of UX done in place where are the blockages so that we prevent people who shouldn't be using it this way from doing that? Like, is there something we should be laying on these companies? Like, nope, you need to, like ChatGPT, you can't prompt certain responses or prompt answers to questions that it may be harmful or whatever it decides at that point. But yeah, I think, should it be up to them, or do you think everybody's just going to leave it on the governing bodies to decide?
Well, well, given my cynicism towards the chaps and ladies in government, I wouldn't have much faith that they could do anything right. Well, I don't have much faith. Theoretically, yeah, I think it should be governed if we actually had, smart people. But I think that it needs to be regulated. I mean, it is, AI is a computer at the end of the day. Glitches happen, bugs happen. I mean, if you're using ChatGPT, what's to say that for whatever reason, maybe someone uses a word it doesn't recognize, and someone's given a dictionary to an AI and it swears at a customer completely out of the blue. I know it's an extreme example, but it's something that could happen. I really think there should be limitations, yes, on what, for example, ChatGPT can say or do, because at least with human error, you can realize it, you can rectify it, but an AI would have to wait for someone to modify that or to include that in the programming if they haven't already done so. So for me, I think it's just really important that companies make sure that they stay ethical with it. And also, okay, I'm of half a mind to think that more and more people are becoming robots and AI. So to have a system of AI in terms of chat or speech, I think it would actually, people would prefer that. But again, that cynicism aside, I think that when it comes to design, user experience, the key word there is user experience. And for me, not one user is the same as another. And of course, you can't make an app with slight modifications because someone has a different visual preference where it's not impacting the use of their app. But I think that there needs to be some degree of care, and that you need humans to interact with humans. AI could do the back office stuff. AI could work with humans in terms of coming up with other designs based on a design you've done. But I think the human interaction, again, another keyword, human interaction, not artificial interaction, even though some interactions with people can seem pretty artificial. But yeah, I really do think that there needs to be the human element. So even if the role of the UX designer or the UI designer change changes, it should just be changed. It shouldn't be removed, which I don't think it ever would. People will always be able to do things that an AI can't. But you have to be careful that the AI is not able to do more than a person. I don't think it's a case of AI will 100% replace a person's job. But as soon as the AI gets to be able to do more than 50, 60, 70% of the job, then I think it's a cause for concern, definitely. I mean, what do you guys think? Will, I mean, what do you think on it?
What is a shorter version of that question? Real quick, I'm having a little bit of a difficulty trying to get the heart of it.
Well, the question is, should there be limitation? All right, the short version: should there be limitations on what AI can or could and should do, or not?
Well, yes, as we talked about before, with the potential for laws governing what its abilities are. When smartphones first really started getting popular, of course, there were no real limitations or laws to them except their actual physical limitations. But we only started getting laws and regulations around them years later to get rid of some of the more negative effects of it. Same thing with video games. I'm sure you guys have heard of the different laws targeted at video games, trying to reduce the gambling systems in some of the more loot box style games. And those have really only had positive impacts
they are terrible.
to regulate that sort of stuff. It's just that it lags behind. So I think once we really start seeing really negative effects of AI, like repeated across an actual measurable timeline, I think that's when we'll start to get to see actual limitations, from actual bodies of law.
Yeah, I was never a fan of the monetization of games. I mean, it wasn't play to win. It was more pay to win.
Exactly.
You just buy all the stuff, you get all the best stuff. Next thing you know, you're atop of the leaderboard. But again, there's a lot. Excuse me. There are a lot of other things though where I think actually uh, talent now in a lot of things is played down. I mean, we talk about AI, we talk about games, tutorials. Quite often now, the video games, you have to do a tutorial at the start. It teaches you the basic commands and everything and some tips. Whereas again, in the 90s, you didn't have a tutorial system. You just had to learn as you play. And I still think that the gamers then were far more skillful than the gamers now. That might be a wide sweeping statement, but I've lived in both eras. I was a competitive gamer in the 90s, but I think it's just everything is just being made easier, too easy, and I think AI is something that will compound that further. I don't know. Do you guys have any other closing comments before we wrap up for tonight?
This episode was not made with the use of AI.
And AI paid us to say that.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, by the way, everyone, no AI machines were harmed during the production of this episode. We want to make that clear. Okay. Well, I think I think we've pretty much discussed everything about AI. I mean, of course, it's such a wide, diverse topic. We can't just confine it to one episode. But we really hope that this topical discussion on AI, has given you all food for thought about the impacts, how it's impacting you. How are you using AI? In fact, if you have any questions about anything we've discussed in this episode, or maybe you just want to tell us how AI has impacted you, how you use artificial intelligence in your daily life or your professional life, please do get in touch with us. Email us at framexframe.uxpod@gmail.com, and we will absolutely get back to you. We really want to hear your opinions on AI. Again, please ask us any questions. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. For us, it was really good. I think we had a lot of stimulated discussion, and we will hear you, or you will hear us, in the next episode next week. And for those of you who didn't see my LinkedIn post, please check out the last week's episode 7, where we had another special guest, Grace Ling, the founder of Design Buddies, and episode 6. We had another guest, another colleague of ours, Anna Ivor Sharova. Very good episode about animation. So if you're into that, please listen to that. Anyway, it's good night from me. It's good night from Zach and Will. Say good night, guys.
Good night, everybody, and the AIs.
Yeah, was that a silent goodbye there?
Sorry, I hit the button again. When you post this episode, you should post it as one of those. Do you need prompts for your AI?
Or I'll put I'll word my LinkedIn post to make it seem like we've been hacked by an AI.
That'll work. All right.
Yeah, and I'll throw in a sentence that doesn't make any sense and has no relevance to the episode, just to mess with a few people. I think that'll be. I like messing with people in a harmless way. It's fun. But yeah, anyway. Well, now everyone knows that, so I'll have to think of something new. But anyway, thank you all very much for listening to us. Again, we hope it's been informative. More importantly, we hope you've enjoyed it. Again, please get in touch with us either by the email or on LinkedIn. And we look forward to producing the next episode. And we look forward to any comments and any support. And please share this podcast with everyone you think might be interested in it. And even if they're not interested in it, share it with them and get them interested in it. All right, so everyone, thank you very much, and we will see you on the on next week's. Well, we'll speak to you on next week's episode. Good night, everyone. Bye bye.